Welcome to ReReview, where we watch movies from our past with a perspective from today. Your hosts are Matt, Bobby, and Austin, and we love the films from our youth, so we're taking a look back to see if they still hold up. On this episode, we're discussing Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. It was released in 2004, directed by Danny Larner. It stars John Cho, Kal Penn, and Ethan Emory. This movie makes you wonder how much weed is too much weed. Now, this is a fair warning. We're spoiling a 20-year-old movie, so if you haven't seen it, we will be revealing key plot points. Man, some movies I feel like we watch, obviously there's nostalgia, but this one felt definitely like time travel because of just the shenanigans and the time and space that movies like this were created. I know we watched a lot of, I guess I'll say the coming of age high school films, and this was like a culmination of the shenanigans that tends to happen in those films, and then also I felt very Office Spacey at times, like it wanted to be, and then just ludicrous Pick of Destiny vibes at certain points that made me question my sanity. It's the usual question I'll ask: what was your first experience with this movie, and what do you remember from seeing it for the first time?
I'm trying to think. I didn't watch it in theaters. This definitely would have been a movie that would have been over my head back then. So I feel like I saw the VHS in a Blockbuster, and it had a fairly unique cover to it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I was like, okay, I'll give this a watch, having no idea what I was getting into. And I'll be the first one to admit I'm that kid that wasn't like around a lot of, I mean, I had friends that were, smoking and everything, but I wasn't partaking. So like, I don't think I watched a lot of them. I didn't really grow up on like Cheech and Chong or, our generation's versions of that, whatever the hell that is. I guess, is that what this movie is?
Maybe that's what this is.
So like, I didn't really know what I was getting into. And like, I was from the South, so I didn't even know what a White Castle was. So I knew nothing.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was either.
But it was an interesting thing to watch, because I think I at least watched it. It had to be at least a few years after it hit VHS that I watched it. So like the time capsule nature of it, like to its credit, I don't feel like it shows its age too much. Like they
only a couple flip phones,
only a couple, the compact computer at the beginning, but that's about it. It's a fairly it's a road trip movie, right? So like,
yeah,
I'm sure Corolla still look like that. So you could say it takes place at any time.
Yeah, that bit of Bobby, how about for you watching it for the first time?
I have a similar experience to Matt, where this was kind of over my head. Like, I had not experienced anything like this. I don't smoke or do anything like that, so it was all new to me, kind of. But I think
we're just
I saw
a bunch of nerds, aren't we?
Yeah, unfortunately,
damn nerds.
so I guess. But yes,
there goes the subscriptions.
I think I watched it on like HBO or something, like long after.
Oh, so not USA. So you still got to see an unedited version.
It's like, at least, I mean, you didn't see the unrated version probably, but at the very least you
haven't seen that until this one, I believe. So
it's weird because when you think of, I guess, weed culture, my brain went to Friday, right? For a bit. Gosh, what else are big weed movies? See, we are nerds because we don't even know like what are the weed movies that we should have been watching. And I think for me,
I mean, for me, like the definitive one, I mean, there's obviously the classics, but I think to me, the one I always think back to is Half Baked.
No, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's like the go-to weed movie for me. I mean, you have Dave Chappelle and John's, like, you just have like the crew.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my lack of being able to even come up with that is a reflection of the nerdery we just discussed.
No, like I was drawing a total blank right there.
I guess just like the appeal of the weed film, and there's the association here in terms of it being something you attach to versus this being like a funny jaunt. And that's what it was for me back then. For some reason, I feel like I did see this in the theater because shenanigans, and there was no way for me to not want to see a film that's just full of nonsense, which just kind of ends up being. Plus, we get cameos that were very unexpected to make you go, wait, what's happening right now? But we have this journey, and it's, what is it? Would you call this just the typical best friend's journey? Is that what it is?
I mean, it's definitely the trains, planes, automobiles as well as like this. I don't know. It's kind of like a spirit journey in a way too.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it's totally
It's
a spirit
definitely like
journey.
a coming of age type of story. Like learn something and try to figure out what to do with your life from that, like mixed with a like weird road trip kind of situation.
Well, if you're working an office job and you feel like you get the short end of the stick in that job, is the best way to resolve your issues going on a bender and then getting White Castle? Is that what I learned?
Yes,
Mhm.
clearly. But it's kind of funny because they very much played up to the buddy cop stereotype where you have like the loose cannon and the
Mhm.
straight lace character, but then the straight lace
Right.
character also smokes weed. So it's
Right,
like
right.
that was the thing that like looking back on it kind of throws me off now because like it against type.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, he's a medical student, the other guy's a finance dude. Like they're not like stay at home, do nothing, slacker types, like a Beavis and Butthead situation.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I recall this was listening to radio in Los Angeles, but there was a term that they would throw around, which is basically like functional smokers. The idea is, you just don't know that there's so many people out there who actually partake in weed, and you would never know because they actually contribute to society and are completely normal outside of this being a habit. I will say what the movie represents is something we'd probably call a little bit more extreme, but we should probably get into
Not extreme.
why we like Mountain Dew, right? Wasn't Mountain Dew like the quintessential extreme drink?
Oh,
Isn't
yeah.
that what started all of it?
That was
That's all.
before Red Bull.
That's all I was thinking about was Code Red Mountain Dew.
Yeah, right. I don't know how much they love that. That's the marketing message I got out here. I don't even care about White Castle. I'm like, what about the Mountain Dew? It sets it up pretty early for this thing that they're going to go on, and then we also have the love story. We meet Harold and Maria in the elevator, and he has his little flashback in his brain about how he's going to handle the conversation, and it doesn't go like that. I took down my note, and I think it's because in society we expect people to perform and act a certain way. My note was just like, let awkward people be awkward. It was just pure awkwardness the entire time, and it's a bit of rinse and repeat because Harold's going through that journey of turning from I guess submissive, do whatever the boss says, afraid to step outside of the box, don't break my car, to I'm gonna threaten you, boss, type of thing.
If I would have never ever talked to the chick if it were me, like I would have if I would have had one or two awkward elevator rides, I would have been like a stair man for the rest of my life. Like, that would have never happened.
The funniest thing about it to me is like, if I look at this movie in a vacuum, I think it's fine because again, you have the growth of both the characters as they arc throughout the movie. But then knowing that the sequels exist, and it technically shouldn't play a part in it, but the fact that I feel like they reset both their characters when they did the sequel kind of made it a little bit disappointing watching this one, to know that Harold goes back to being kind of passive again after this one. Because like it does. I mean, it's kind of jumping ahead, but it ends strong with this character because you do get him at the very beginning being a pushover, having that awkward kind of incel moment where like he's in love with somebody he doesn't even talk to or have the guts to talk to or whatever. I mean, he just stands there awkwardly as the button's going unpressed right. And then you progress through it to the very end. And so it's kind of upsetting to me that they did reset him somewhat for the next movie. Almost to the point where like they didn't know where to take that character after that. It's almost like he has to be that straight man who's, not sure of himself if he's going to end up with the nerdy Asian girl with glasses or not type character.
Do you think that's because I guess, see, I don't remember the other films or not that I may not have watched them, so the vacuum is a little bit different for me, but do you think that was to maintain how they handled the jokes in this film to kind of be able to recreate that same vibe?
Oh, for sure. I know that because I didn't really remember the director, of this at all. So like I had to look it up. And I was like, oh yeah, it's the guy who did Dude, Where's My Car? My guess is like, I would be shocked if the same team did the sequels as well. Because I don't know, this feels like the kind of movie that shouldn't have worked, right?
Right.
Mhm.
And when you look at the concept of it, it's not I mean, you have two I'm using huge air quotes here, non-typical weed smoking characters or whatever going through this road trip adventure. And at one point they end up riding a cheetah, and another
Mhm.
one is married to a giant bag of weed and wearing a wife beater beats it, you know. Like on paper that shouldn't work. But the
Right,
fact
but-
that it did, it's
Right.
like Zoolander, right? It's like it shouldn't have worked, but it somehow was at the right place at the right time with the right actors, and it worked. So I feel like when they're like, we're going to do a sequel because it did work, everyone's like, but we did everything.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was curious about, you think it is the right time, the right place, the right actors? You think that's why it worked? I mean, obviously, like the casting, like the two leads had like pretty good chemistry. And I mean, the characters around them, like, although they were stereotypes, most of them, they were pretty good. I mean, was it the casting and like the just yeah, something about this worked, but I can't quite put my finger on it other than I think the casting was good.
I think the casting was good. I think that the pacing was off at times.
Right. Yes, I agree.
It kind of dragged at points, and some of the jokes I feel like they kind of dragged it a little bit too long. This could just be the unrated version, though.
I'm afraid of that piece right there. Yeah.
If I watched the theatrical cut, maybe it gelled a little bit better. I don't think it was drastically different than what we watched, but I do feel like the things that worked for it was relatively unknowns with well-known cameos. The soundtrack worked well for it. And then you had the twist of the two kind of characters that you wouldn't expect to be in this kind of situation. I'm more surprised we didn't get a Harold and Kumar prequel to see them in their college years.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm scared it might exist now that I've said it out loud.
Well, I mean, how do we feel about each character who really, to me, is just full of stereotypes, right? Expectations around Asian culture as a whole, with Kumar being this hyper intelligent, knows everything about what kind of doctor was he trying to be? I forgot.
Oh, I don't
Some kind of
remember.
surgeon or
just
something?
general surgeon or something.
Yeah.
Either way, like they start him off being ultra impressive in an interview, but then also give us that shock of, I'm going to take a call and interrupt this interview for something that he feels is more important, and starts cussing and saying a lot of bad stuff. But it was such an element to me watching that, thinking of how people code switch, how you change the way you speak depending on who you're talking to, how you can be comfortable with friends and let loose in a way that he did. No, albeit speaking through an interview and talking about how you're going to smoke a fat blunt with your buddy is a different tact entirely. But they made sure to set up the point of getting him in a surgical room to prove that he has the chops to actually do this work.
Right. Like I didn't really buy some of that part of it where basically like, there's like your parents like want you to go into a job like insurance or whatever, and you go in it, you don't like it, but it's doable. It's not like being a doctor. Isn't being a doctor like super hard? You don't just like, I know they joked about him being like some prodigy at doctoring, but like, I mean, you can't just like not want to do it and go through that, right? I mean, that doesn't make sense.
I mean, he said it himself, right? Just because you've got a big one doesn't mean you have to get into porn, right? Just because you got perfect MCATs or whatever, then there is that stretch of like, would you put that much effort into that amount of knowledge and skills that he acquired to get to that point? My guess is that prequel that I hope never got made would probably maybe there might have been something actually inspired. I don't know, maybe he the weed is opened his third mind's eye or whatever, and it allows him to just absorb all the medical information possible. Maybe him smoking the MCAT book or whatever actually gave him the knowledge. He did it. It's like Neo style when he's getting all the kung fu
It just
cranked
gets
into his brain.
downloaded.
It's just through weed. See, we missed out, guys. Like, we could have been so smart.
I will tell you, I swear this is going to be very specific. Go back to LA radio listening and thinking of Loveline. Do y'all remember Loveline? Did you ever listen to that?
Dr. Drew Pinsky.
Back in the day?
Yes.
And Adam Carolla?
I didn't hear it because I wasn't in the area at the time, but I did see because they had on MTV, I think.
Oh, yes, they did the show of it after the fact. Well, one of the things Adam Carolla used to always say was that people's brain, and again, there's no scientific proof behind this. It just definitely made for a good radio bit, but ultimately that your brain stops advancing the when you start like smoking weed. So if you start at 16, like that's where you're going to stop getting smarter. And so what you just described, I'm like, well, maybe if you do smoke the whole book.
They're just not,
and look, it got me.
They're not smoking the right thing. That's all. You have to use the right papers, laminate included.
Right.
Oh my!
It helps with absorption.
Well, we get quite a few bits. They get to a college. We see college parties. He's got one girl who Harold. What's her name? I forgot her name. Who really likes Harold, but then doesn't later on.
Mm-hmm.
It was Princeton, right?
Yeah, Cindy Kim at Princeton.
Cindy Kim. Okay. We get, I think, one of the more, or at least first egregious, maybe I'm missing something, but, he's buying weed. These two hot chicks come up to Kumar. He's puts on all of the swag to be like, hey, what's up? Y'all just want to get together and smoke. And then the bathroom scene happens while they're escaping the rent-a-cop that's running around Princeton.
That was a good.
Have you ever played Battleshits?
That was a good move, though. The rent-a-cop wouldn't try to find him in the women's restroom.
So you're saying you played Battleshits, Bobby?
Well, he's like, I'm not going to acknowledge that question. I'm not going there. To that entire sequence, like I always just go back to like Dumb and Dumber whenever there's any sequence like that or whatever. I'm just like, oh my God.
I mean, watching it definitely, and the sounds made me gag, but that's only because if you've ever been to any airport in the good old US of A, there's in the men's bathroom definitely has a bit of that experience at times. Not gonna lie, it's not great.
Oh no.
All right, I'm gonna have to challenge you to Battleshits, Bobby, at some point.
You're giving me a really bad memory about like Angel Stadium, like many years ago, long time ago. I feel like they had like a urinal trough that was just like a giant, like essentially like a giant bucket in the center of the room. And so you'd face the dude. I feel like I have a memory of this. Maybe like I made it up and this is like a bad dream or something.
Just locking eyes with the guy in front of you as you just go.
I feel like this existed. I can't.
To be fair, that does destroy the whole unspoken. I know we're completely going off topic. The unspoken rule of when you go up to urinals, you look everywhere but to the sides. You're supposed to be looking up and down the wall, or like you don't do that, and then now all of a sudden your wall's taken away. So all you do is lovingly lock eyes with a stranger across from you as you're both.
That nice pubes joke was funny though. It was a nice callback to
Jamie Kennedy,
to the trimming.
There was actually a lot of nice callbacks and like the sayings and stuff like that with the, I'm worthless, I'm not worthwhile or whatever. And then
mentioning Jamie Kennedy, I mean, so how many different cameos did we have?
Jamie Kennedy, Ryan Reynolds,
Neil
Patrick. I mean, that deserves a whole segment unto itself.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a couple other ones that weren't as prominent, but those were the ones that kind of stood
Christopher
out.
Maloney played the cop from he played Freak Show.
Well, thinking of Neil Patrick Harris, and yes, a segment in and of itself, because it absolutely makes sense. I think you mentioned this, Matt, but the idea between this movie and anything happening prior to for Neil Patrick Harris was basically a jump from Doogie Howser to this. What was in between that?
I imagine a bunch of made-for-TV movies, and because I mean, it's always tough, right? Being a child actor, you're specifically known for something, and then once it's over, it's hard to get work after that. I mean, even I mean, really, if you even think about this movie, that's the only aspect of him as a person that they really talked about. But then I feel like, and I'm curious, it'd be very interesting if he talked about taking this role, because again, flipping stereotypes, you have Doogie Howser in the back of your car, and all he's talking about strip clubs and doing drugs and whatnot. So same thing with having the two characters doing weed or whatever. Like it's looking at. So I wonder if he saw that it was like, yeah, but I don't want to be. I want to be an extreme version of me, like playing a character of me in order to do it. And I think there's no way that somebody wasn't watching this and was like, yeah, this person's gonna be perfect for Barney, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah, it
no
totally
way that
seems like it. Yeah.
it was the transition. So.
Uh-huh.
It's I mean, just seeing the character and you're going from back in the day going, wait, isn't that Doogie Howser? And then you write that contrast to the idea of what you know of this person who is not the character they played, but you attach so much to it to get that shock and awe. It really, from the Neil Patrick Harris moment, it's you get these bits, and that one extends through the life of it, because they meet him, he's high, he wants to get strippers, and he steals their car, shenanigans ensue. This is where we get all the detours in between, and we have bits around cheetahs and, like you mentioned, marrying a bag of weed and getting with Freak Show and Freak Show's wife. Do you have any particular bit that you thought stood out to you, or one that you particularly enjoyed?
I liked
Bobby?
the extreme dudes, and then when they stole their car, I liked their songs.
Okay, what made you like the extreme dudes? Because this time and age, we're getting into X Games was already a very big thing, right? Because that was like late 90s into early 2000s where that really blew up. And these guys were basically a mockery of all of that, right?
Right. Well, I don't mean I necessarily like the extreme dudes. I just thought that I thought their choice of music was funny.
You're telling me you didn't want to get a kayak and try to float it through us down the aisle of a 7-Eleven?
I expected him to like eat those like extreme chips, kind of like Cookie Monster, where he just like throws them all into his face and just like he just grabs a handful of them and like gently puts them directly into his mouth.
I was trying to remember if that was because this was a director's cut, or if not, because it felt awkward. And maybe that was on purpose. I was like, wait, why is he eating it so daintily? So you didn't care for the extreme guys, but how did you feel as them being this the antagonist of both Harold and Kumar?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seemed like, well, it was like a character development thing for them, because they kind of felt like they were doormats. And so, that was an ongoing theme, like where when they were in the police station, like none of the police even saw them at all.
I might be voting for Battleships, but did Matt, did you have a favorite bit?
I mean, there's the typical ones or whatever that you mentioned that kind of come to mind, but I kind of watching it again. Like I like and this was 2004, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're now 20 years later to 2024, and somehow the jail scene with the two black guys is somehow still relevant. But it was almost it's that sense of playing against type in this movie, subverting your expectations on stuff, having somebody who goes through all that and like literally is sitting there reading a book, and it's just like, I had two dads and I was picked on and I'm fat and all this stuff, whatever. Like it's just like just zen. Of course he says why he's zen, but and then you got the end credit scene, which I don't know if I ever actually saw the end credit scene before, with the two of them winning the case against the state or whatever. But that, I think it was the cherry on top was when the guy who literally was in his pajamas that they somehow fingered for the crime or whatever. And like he just looks at him and is like, I think you guys should go now. Like literally just like he could go too, but he's just like, you guys should just go.
Well, that's definitely what hurts, right? A complete like indictment on policing 20 years ago. And time moves slow is all we could say. Because if you look at what was it, 12 years before that, LA was on fire. Anyways, we don't have to go down that path, but it just is a hell of a thing. And again, lots of times comedy is used to do exactly that, to point out how ridiculous society can be. Now that we got serious, they make it to White Castle after a lot of shenanigans, flying on a glider. Were you as satisfied as they appeared to be eating those burgers? And really, I should ask, have you actually tried White Castle?
I have to mention some of the green screen in this movie.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it is serious weatherman style like stuff. Are they like, can we borrow your TV station and your like green screen technology for just a minute so we could put people in front of a bunch of stuff?
I'm actually happy that Bobby wants to have them raise the level of their green screen work. That it was not sufficient for your taste, sir.
I'm not even.
I didn't see
I'm not
Earth
even
in the
going to
movie,
mention
so
the hang
they
glider
get a pass on
situation. That's like, that's different. I'm talking like all the other stuff.
Back to your
Matt.
question.
Yes, Matt, have you tried White Castle?
I have had White Castle, and this is where, because again, going to this movie, had never heard of White Castle, like never been to White Castle, but had never heard of White Castle either.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just being from the area that I was, never had a chance to experience it. And then watching this movie made me want to have it, especially because I don't know, I guess the slider format, I just imagine it'd be like having Hawaiian roll sliders.
Yeah.
So I was like, I am all on board on this. And then I had a chance to have it in Vegas because they have one off the strip. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try it now. And I really didn't like it. I was like, this is, to use modern lingo, mid. And then I was like, well, maybe it was just because this isn't like a real one. This is a Vegas imitation. So like, and then I ended up going to New York, New Jersey, and I was like, okay, now I'm going to actually try it for real.
Yeah.
And I tried it for real, and it was the same thing.
No.
And I was just like, this is not, like, I don't know if this movie hyped it up too much, but I guess I wasn't high enough because I didn't fall down a hill off a hang glider and ride a cheetah and, you know, get bit by a raccoon. So like none of that happened to me. So I guess that's why I didn't appreciate it as much.
I did love the raccoon. If that went longer, I could have been happier.
I loved how it was like so obviously a puppet. I was amused.
Yes, that's why. That's what made it good. Bobby, have you had White Castle?
So what I had was for a little bit after the movie came out, and I'm pretty sure this was like a tie-in. They sold like boxed sliders in the like freezer section of the grocery store.
They
for
still
a while.
do that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I had some of those, and I was kind of like, okay, like they're like the Wendy's like square patties, and I was like, oh, all right. And so, yeah, I mean, I had them, but I don't think having the like frozen aisle section is the real experience, or at least I hope it's not.
Yeah, the idea here that, you know, marketing a movie around going to a fast food joint is just amazing, but that influence is there. And like you said, Matt, you're like, oh, maybe I do want to get a hold of trying White Castle. I'm actually happy to hear both of your experiences because I still haven't had it. After all these years, I thought about going the frozen route, knowing that existed, but also said, you know what, no, I got to have it like in a real restaurant. I think also what you described, Matt, is everything I've heard about White Castle as well. So when I was close to being like somewhere on the East Coast where they had it, I remember driving by going, I need to try White Castle. And then everyone just said, it's all right. And I was like, well, okay, we got to get to a meeting, so I'm all right. I can wait till another time. So I'm happy to hear how you've described it because I don't have the sense of urgency to actually get to White Castle.
I literally was on a business trip this last week, and we passed by a White Castle, and I was like, oh, I was hungry. Let's grab White Castle or something. And even like the people I was with was like, no, let's go get Culver's instead. No, we're good.
Oh, no. Well, sometimes you just got to take a franchise that is good for the munchies and make a movie out of it.
Culver's is good too. But I gotta.
Now I want to go to Culver's. Let's go to Culver's, man.
They did a good job with the. They did a good job with. I mean, I did. You know, like White Castle became like a thing. You know, for a while it was.
and to your point, that's because I mean, there was the whole they tried to get, because what did I say, it was Krispy Kreme was the original.
Yeah, you said there, which is bonkers to me.
And I think that they didn't, because if you really think about how much of a risk it is to be associated with a movie like this,
Right.
Mhm.
right? Because I mean, it's 2004. Yeah, you have the era of the crude, rude movies or whatever, but to associate your brand with smoking weed, which is still a federal crime to this day,
Mhm.
but back then it was on a state basis that was a crime, and like it's a weird thing for somebody to. But White Castle is like, yeah,
let's green light
go.
this.
Right.
It must have the right person at the right time pick up the phone to agree to it.
Well,
And
there's the
it
famous story of like how M&M's didn't want to do E.T., so that's why he's picking up Reese's Pieces, So I guess they didn't want to be like the M&M's.
That feels like a mistake.
Yeah. I was like, what part of an alien movie by Steven Spielberg was like, yeah, no, we don't want to be associated with that.
Yeah, I
That
guess like
feels
the
like a
alien
mistake.
liked in the script, the alien liked the candy, and they didn't want. I guess they thought that aliens liking their candy was bad luck.
Again, all back to marketing and people making odd decisions. Are we marketing this movie in 2024? Bobby, are you recommending it?
Like we said earlier, for some reason, and I mean, sure, it's the cast and all this stuff, but for some reason, the movie works for me. I enjoyed it. It was funny. Like, I'm not like a stoner guy. Like, it's kind of like a little bit more than just one note stoner jokes, which it really had a high potential of being, even though there's like a lot of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of other stuff too. And, bonus points for not being a 3-hour epic story, So, for some reason, which I'm not, other than the cast, I'm not really 100% sure it works for me. So I recommend.
Nice. You don't want the double director's cut with the extended half hour of just Neil Patrick Harris riding around in a car with topless women?
Okay, maybe I'll take that. But maybe a little
Matt,
bit,
you have
maybe
to
a little
make
bit more of the Princeton party, maybe a little bit more of Freak Show, but
oh my god,
the
he's
rest of it.
very selective in his choice, folks.
Yes.
You could tell. Matt, are you marketing people going to White Castle in 2024?
The movie, yes. Yeah, I agree. I think that it's a movie that's of its time that still works to its day. Like I'll pop this in along with Zoolander and a couple other movies that just are nice snapshots of a time period where you could do movies like these, and they are unapologetic in what they are. And I think that that's what makes this, like you said, you can have them riding a cheetah and fighting a puppet raccoon, and it's okay because it's not taking itself too seriously. But when it matters, the emotional arcs are there.
Yeah.
And so there's the payoff and everything else attached to it. So just overall, it works. I do think you need to be selective on where you watch this, just in case somebody walks into the room that you might not want seeing some of the stuff that happens. It's not the worst, but it's definitely not something you might want to watch like on a, well, let's just say a plane would be a good example.
Yeah, with the audio loud somehow.
Right.
Playing it on your phone.
I think some people need to hear that it's okay to not take a movie too seriously, right? To have like a puppet, like it doesn't have to be like super realistic. And I mean, like I made fun of the green screen stuff, but I mean, like it worked in the movie, I think everything doesn't have to be 100% serious all the time.
Yeah, I think that, the challenge always with comedies, especially as time passes, is what holds up when you think, okay, what was funny back then? How do we look at the same humor now? I could imagine there's jokes here that could be challenging for people, especially around, race and stereotypes.
Right.
At the same time, just let go a little bit is what I'm going to say. It's all right. I mean, I don't think we've taken the biggest.
I mean, I was referring to the puppet and the like green screen, to be fair, not the race part. But
oh, I know. That's why I'm bringing it up. I'll do the challenging thing for you, Bobby, since you didn't want to say it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I think we haven't tackled something like Blazing Saddles yet. Think about a movie of that, that age and how comedy was approached then and now, I think it could still be very funny.
Mhm.
Do I get canceled for saying that? We haven't even watched the movie yet. It is interesting to think about putting these things in their time and space and then laughing at how those jokes were approached, but then also, recognizing when maybe they push too far at parts and seeing how that works. So I'm in the same boat. I think it's definitely, worth watching. I haven't seen the sequels. Sounds like they may not be worth going down the same path, but at least kicking off something that was quintessential for, I don't know, 2004, it felt good. So yes, we're saying pick it up. It's a popcorn flick for sure. And if you partake, you'll probably enjoy it even more than we did, since again, the nerds are talking here. As always, thank you for listening.
Nerddom here.
Oh, you're not ashamed. Good.
No.
I'm glad you're not ashamed. Well, you're about to be ashamed. Thank you for listening. As always, we appreciate it. And I just have one question for both of you. Who wants the first reach around?